Good afternoon, students. What I wanted to do with this brief summation of the reading on Pierre Bourdieu is to talk about some of the key phrases that you should understand so that you can be able to answer those questions in your reading. I think it's important for you to understand why he's talking this way, why he develops these theories, because he is a sociologist. And he's known for his theories on cultural production, taste, and social class. So, what does a sociologist do? Well, they study human behavior, interactions, and social structures to understand how we as a society function, how we change, and even how we developed. So he saw art as deeply intertwined with social and cultural contexts, and he sought to understand the complex interplay between art and society. He believed that um, we should we should not just look at a work of art in itself, but we should also consider the social conditions of when it was produced and how it was circulated. Now, you do that when you study art history, when you study, for example, Renaissance art, or when you study other styles, but we don't necessarily do that when we're looking at contemporary art. So, I want to talk about some of the key phrases in the reading, and I want to highlight and make a distinction between four words or phrases. I need you to understand what artifact means within this context, because he talks about artifacts, what the cultural field is, cultural production is, and lastly, the field of cultural production. So, let's start with artifact. What is an artifact? Now, most of the times you think about an artifact as an archaeologist in a dig that's looking to uncover bowls or in ancient Egypt, some mummies or something old. Well, an artifact is any object that is made in a culture. So it doesn't have to be old. So a Gucci handbag and your creative works are considered artifacts. So that's artifact. Now let's take the term cultural field. So probably what you want to do is take notes and then distill your notes and just a couple of sentences be able to understand what these terms or phrases mean. So let's do cultural field first. The cultural field refers to the social space in which cultural production, which we'll talk about, takes place. So, in short, the cultural field is the social structures and power dynamics that shape artistic production. Now, the social field includes institutions, organizations, networks that shape the production, distribution, and the consumption of these products or artifacts. And within capitalism, there's always a struggle with competition. Individual groups or individuals or groups compete for resources, recognition, even power. Now, the cultural field and the term field of cultural production are related concepts and often used interchangeably, but there's a little difference. We will talk about field of cultural production after cultural production. Cultural production, what is that? Cultural production is shaped by social, economic, and the political dynamics of the cultural field. So just think of the word production, okay? Cultural production refers to the process by which cultural products are created, circulated, and consumed within the cultural field. That's an important distinction. It involves a creative practice, labor, and resources that go into producing cultural artifacts like art, literature, music, and film. This is an important point. Cultural production shapes our social identities through the production of them and the consumption or buying of these cultural artifacts. So, if cultural production shapes social identities, then Bourdieu argues that taste is manifested preference. It's just not a matter of personal preference or opinion, but it is shaped also, or it is shaped by the cultural field and also shows social factors such as class, education, etc. I'm going to restate that. Taste is manifested preference. Okay? And it is shaped by the cultural field as well as social factors. Example, class, education, upbringing. So that is how taste is a manifested preference. So let's talk about the field of cultural production. So the cultural field and the field of cultural production, as I said, are related concepts and even used interchangeably because they both refer to the social space in which cultural products are created, circulated, consumed. The term cultural field is a broad term that refers to any social or cultural domain, while the field of cultural production is more specifically focused on the production and dissemination of artistic and cultural products. So, if we go into some of the details of the field of cultural production, it involves, competition between individuals and groups within cultural, economic, social capital. The field is structured by a set of power relationships and hierarchies, and this is important, which determine the value and legitimacy. Now we talk about taste of cultural products. The field is structured by a set of power relationships and hierarchies which determine the value and legitimacy of the artifacts. So I repeated that. Within this field, artists, writers, musicians, and other cultural producers sort of navigate this complex web of socioeconomic and cultural influences in order to produce and disseminate their work. So, the field of cultural production is not static or fixed, but it's constantly changing in response to broader social, economic, and political developments. Now, Bourdieu's concept of the field of cultural production has been very influential in the field of cultural studies because it offers a powerful framework to understand the complex social and cultural dynamics that shape artistic and cultural practices. Okay? So you have a question about understanding the cultural field and the field of cultural production. So both of those you need to understand, and if you do, how they're intertwined with social and cultural context, then you understand that if taste is cultural and not necessarily natural, and that's what he says, therefore, taste is a manifested preference, since taste is not natural. But actually, it's a construction. Now, there are social patterns in matters of taste. That's because these social patterns are connected to social divisions like class, elitism, gender, being educated or not, etc. And so, therefore, when taste is bought and sold, like a Gucci bag, it actually is a social marker and reflects, therefore, the social patterns that have been created. So, considering art theories within the lens of this sociologist, within the lens of the cultural field, you now understand that all art theory develops within this social space known as, we would say, culture. He calls it the cultural field. Embedded in any cultural field throughout history is political social struggles to maintain culture. Therefore, theories of art are another way to maintain hierarchies of power, domination. That's pretty strong words, but at a minimum, influence, to be influential. And that is directly connected to cultural power, the art market, and what we value. And that's why he's very, he explains very clearly how all really art theory is connected to cultural power. As we said, he doesn't believe that aesthetic experience is natural, but reflects the culture it exists in. And what does that mean? I'll give you an example. The originator of a work of art produces the work of art within the culture that the artist exists in. Well, viewers that see the work exist in the same culture. So our standard, or the way we view a work of art, already exists in the culture. So that means that it is endowed with meaning, cultural meaning already. So within that context, let's talk about cultural competence. Now here, and that's another key phrase. Here's an analogy. An employer tells you that you are getting a raise because you are digitally competent. You know all the software they use in this corporation. Unfortunately, your new friend is being fired for being incompetent on the job since they do not know the software. This is viewed as deficient and inadequate on the job. So you take that word competency, but then you put it within cultural competency. How do we get it? What does it foster? And what is cultural competence? Since taste is cultural and social patterns exist in the culture, these create social divisions. Because social patterns in matters of taste are connected to class, elitism, and education, that creates separatism, inequities even. So, for example, if you are very wealthy and you are highly educated and you then are deemed culturally competent based on class and cultural snobbery. So, what happens is this in turn perpetuates entitlement and inequities in our society. So, if you are not culturally competent, like the job, you are deficient or inadequate in some way. Okay, and that's the example we talk about, or I talk about most often is okay, in this culture, if you don't know Vincent van Gogh, then you have to wonder why, because he's pretty well known. Certainly his lifetime is pretty well known. Then you have to wonder why that individual doesn't know that particular artist. So let's go to this last phrase, classifying objects, classify the classifier. Since you should understand cultural competence and you consider yourself culturally competent, well, what does it mean classifying objects classifies the classifier? Here's an example. When you're going to buy an item, what you buy reveals something about you as a consumer. According to this theorist, you have been socialized about what has value or is tasteful. Therefore, the object you purchased has been classified by you as having value and is in good taste. And in doing so, it classifies you, the purchaser, So, systems of classification are how and what you value in an object is socially constructed and can symbolically reflect hierarchical power within our culture. So, to bring this to a close, since you have reviewed this summary about this sociologist, I want you to think about the last question on the questionnaire and be able to answer it. How has your profession as an artist, how are you part of the field of cultural productions? I'll end there.